I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Schirch, who is a mega established powerhouse voice in the digital peace building field. And Lisa is going to share a review of the blueprint on pro-social tech design governance, which is recently released by the Council, the Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies, and the University of Notre Dame and the Toda Peace Institute. So without further ado, Lisa, kick us off with our first session.
Thanks so much, Nick and Lena, for kicking off today. This is great that we're all together. Some of us here on Zoom. There's about 130 of us. I don't know how many are in the rooms with you, Nick.
We have about 30 folks here, I would say.
Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. I mean, one of the things that we really believe in is building relationships and trust across vision requires us to both be in person sometimes and also to have spaces online, digital platforms that allow us to coordinate and cooperate. And at the Council on Tech and Social Cohesion, we've been really trying to create these spaces, both virtually and in person, where technologists and people interested in polarization and peace building can meet and really focus on the design of platforms and how they're either dividing us or bringing us together. So I'm going to just share a little bit about this year-long research process that we've gone through. And this really involved all of the members of the council who were either contributing to this through workshops, giving feedback on it. It took off from our launch in 2023 when we brought about 30 speakers together, speakers who were focused on design of technology and different platforms. And one of the groups that has really helped formulate the challenge that we're focused on at the council is the Integrity Institute. And the Integrity Institute came up with this sort of formulation that digital harms largely arise from platform design, which can be changed and regulated. So this is the idea that we have agency in terms of how platforms are designed. And when we think of digital harms, yes, people contribute to digital harms, but the digital platforms themselves are making choices that are motivating and amplifying those harms. And so whether we're talking about market harms of fraud and scams, or social harms like defamation and bullying, or political harms like the polarizing political rhetoric that gets amplified by algorithms on social media, or political surveillance by governments who are using social media. All of these different types of harms that we see online are really stemming from design problems. And partly this is related to these kinds of key questions related to platform design: what the design allows you to do, what it prevents you from doing, how the design persuades or incentivizes you to do some things but not others, what the design amplifies and highlights, and how it might manipulate or deceive you to do certain behaviors. And so, you know, our study, our research on this kind of is looking at how design shapes human behavior. And what we call antisocial tech is contrasted with pro-social tech. And the key design factors that we have found are how the platform is monetized, what kind of metrics they're using to sort of evaluate whether users are happy and satisfied and how groups of people are interacting. What the data looks like in terms of like, are they gathering people's data? Are they minimizing privacy and maximizing data collection? Or are they maximizing privacy and minimizing data collection? We call that privacy by design. Recommendation systems, you know, whether they're amplifying highly emotional content that incentivizes outrage, or that they're amplifying trusted sources, incentivizing areas of agreement between groups. And really then finally the UX design, that user interface, like how are they enabling human agency or inhibiting it? So this is just a really quick overview, but what we have found is like there's sort of three sort of interacting parts to this system. There's the market forces that have been really pushing antisocial design because they want to collect data and they want people to watch these endless ads, which is their profit model. But in doing so, then they are using sort of neuroscience, psychological techniques to keep us engaged longer than we want to, or is good for us. And so these market forces have to be studied and understood. And in order to understand how pro-social design and market forces work, we need really solid platform research. And that research needs to be independent so we really understand the platform impacts on society. So I'm going to briefly talk about our policy recommendations in these three areas. The first is when we gathered a group of venture capitalists and private investors in tech in San Francisco over about a year ago, they said we really need more guidance on what pro-social tech design looks like. We already have members like the Prosocial Design Network that have great websites that are really articulating this. Integrity Institute, also a member, has a library code as well as Prosocial, or as well as New Public is another member that has sort of a library of different designs, but they wanted something a bit more, like proposing a certification system for pro-social tiers, which I'll show you in a minute, a minimum design code, and supporting middleware. So let me just go through these three kind of ideas. One formulation of pro-social tech design tiers could look like something like this, where you have almost like a building code for buildings. You have minimum building standards that cannot, are fireproof. So like the minimum that platforms would need to do, that should be a legal standard. But then we need sort of ways of governments even incentivizing higher levels of pro-social design, pro-social algorithms and recommendation systems. There's several pages in the blueprint that deal with this. Advanced pro-social platforms for social cohesion. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And middleware, which I'll say more about. So the University of Southern California's Neely program has come up with a Neely design code that's this really the minimum standard to be able to work upstream instead of downstream from harmful content. So Ravi Iyer, if you know Ravi, he's been sort of central to this initiative, and the council's really thrown our weight behind these minimum standards. Deliberative tech, which I'll talk about later today, is a more advanced form of pro-social design. So this is where platforms that you probably have not heard of, like Polis and Remesh, Talk to the City, CrowdSmart, these are sort of a new generation of platforms specifically designed to help people across different groups be able to talk with each other, either humanizing, helping them set agendas. I think this is really one of the more advanced forms of pro-social design, and we need it mainstream, not marginalized like it is now. Middleware is a more complicated idea. I'll just give you a 1 second teaser that it's something that could help all of us be able to communicate on different platforms and be able for us to migrate really our networks from one platform to another. So this is going to be a new generation of technology that allows much more interoperability, sort of being able to interact on different platforms. A few quick words on the second set of recommendations, which have more to do with platform research. We really believe that we need a lot more democratic platform oversight, transparency, audits. We need a data standard for pro-social tech metrics. We need to enforce safe harbor protections for researchers so that they don't get sued if they're researching one of the mainstream tech platforms and finding out that they're harmful. And that's happened where researchers at universities have faced lawsuits from the big tech platforms. So one of the things that I just mentioned was the need for sort of embedded or digitized prosocial metrics. Right now, again, the University of Southern California has a great survey that is helping us see user attitudes toward different platforms. But a new generation of metrics would be automatic and would be low cost because they'd be constantly being gathered, and they would enable governments to really, and civil society to really be able to monitor what is happening on different platforms. And finally, the third set of recommendations has to do about how are we going to shift market forces to really support pro-social design. So this involves enforcing competition, antitrust, and anti-monopoly laws, because right now we're all in these walled gardens of big tech. And when new platforms start up, we can't like transport our networks to them. So if we want more pro-social design, we have to make space for us to be able to, people to join them at a low cost, enable them to continue using their networks and other platforms. Again, you can read a lot more about this in the actual blueprint. These are all ideas that many of the members of the council are working on, like this next recommendation to codify product liability for adverse impacts. Our colleagues at Build Up are really working on this, on sort of a polarization tax. So if we can count and we can see on platforms what is happening to society, then we'd be able to tax them or penalize them in some way. All right, I'm going to just quickly say that a bunch of legislation has already been passed or is in the process of being formulated that are examples of pro-social tech design policies in the US and Europe. And our colleague Devika Malik in India has written this very complimentary report about how tech design regulation is happening already in the global south, with many of these same ideas being embedded in Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Kenya, Brazil, and India. So I'll finish up there. Thank you so much for your attention. I don't think we have a lot of time for questions, but we might have just a few if there's any thought. We have till 10:30, I believe, EST. Any quick
Yes,
questions?
thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, we can give about 2 or 3 minutes for questions, certainly. So folks in the room, if anybody has a question, I see a hand in the back. Yeah.
Hey, Lisa, Dan here, Dan Calder, Open Betty. One of the categories I didn't see that is very social oriented, that's truth seeking or cognitive prioritization. I don't know if you had any comments on that, or maybe we could dialogue afterwards.
You know, whether that should be a separate category, right now I have it in the deliberative tech in tier 3 or tier 4, which is really looking at fact building as a feature that should be a design feature on all platforms. Like, how do people not just fact check, but fact build, where people are bringing their experiences and they can contribute and have human agency in the process of making sense of the information that we have in the and really protecting the information integrity in the ecosystem. So I think that's one of the many issues that was raised many times over the last year in our workshops and our research. Maybe it deserves its own category. So as you're saying this, I'm thinking, well, you could have a whole tier of pro-social design just focused on that. And that's where I think what we know is that there's a demand signal from venture capitalists that they need some kind of accreditation, some kind of tier system where they can understand how different affordances, different designs, they might judge where they want to put their funds. So I'm going to make a note of that for future reference. Thanks.
I think we have time for one more. Yeah, go ahead.
Quick question. Thank you so much. This is such a comprehensive blueprint. I'm wondering what is kind of emerging and what's more advanced as we're thinking through all these different pillars of your work and the way you look at the ecosystem, just to kind of understand what's coming in, say, the next year or two, what's longer term, thinking about evolution over the next decade or two.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really the systems thinking that was behind this blueprint, is that we need immediate short-term policy options as well as understanding what is going to be required to really move the needle on this in the long term. So the minimum standards, the Neely design code, is in the short term. Ravi, I think, is online here. Ravi, Lena, others are working to get these passed in different US states in Canada. We have different partners in different countries looking at the Neely design code and adopting all or part of it. So that's definitely on the short term. But a lot of these, thinking about shifting market forces, it's going to take a bigger effort, more different regulation pieces of it. And this is where we're trying to do. The council is coordinating on research, on different hubs that are focused on different pieces of this agenda. And that's our big vision that, yes, in 10 years, we want to have different market, different research environment to enable us to make smarter decisions on platform design. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa, for kicking us off with a wonderful start. We'll be sure to send out the blueprint is published. It's out. We'll be sure to include it in a follow-up email to everybody who attended today. I have a sense that this is the first of many conversations on the blueprint, and maybe we can have future gatherings where we dive into it more in different components. So Lisa, again, thank you very much. And I'm sure you and I will talk again very soon. Actually, you're on the agenda for later in the day. So we'll be seeing Lisa soon. Don't worry.